The problem we're solving today is how to get your references, unique IDs, and indexes auto-populating in Excel tables when you add more data. Hi, I'm John, qualified accountant with 25 years real-world Excel experience. And if you want to save yourself loads of time at work, then hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss any of my time-saving tips. Today I'm talking about how to get references and unique IDs and stuff to auto-populate in tables in Excel, so you don't have to worry about copying and pasting formulas down and you don't end up with sort of missing data and error traps for other people using your spreadsheets. So I've got several examples and different ways of doing things. So the first example though is a straightforward fixed reference. So imagine if you've got a table of data and you're generating it, say, every month, and you want the month name on every single row. And you could just copy and paste that down, but there's a chance someone might forget or mess it up or something. And when you add new data, you want that to auto-populate. So let me give you an example here. So imagine I want to put region 2, and I'm just going to use a few shortcut keys to type that in every single row. Now, when I put in new data, I've got sample data here, I'll put it in at the bottom here. You can see it doesn't populate. And, that could be an issue for you, especially if that column is hidden somewhere in amongst your data. And there's a really simple fix to this. So if I undo that, right, and let's undo the region 2 data going in as well. And instead of just typing it in, if I just put it in quotes inside a formula, so equals region 2, in this case, and hit enter, 1, it goes straight down automatically. But 2, if I now paste on that same new data on the bottom, it auto-populates. Nice and simple, just make sure it's a formula rather than plain text. Dead simple. Okay, what if you're trying to get some kind of index number? So you want an incremental count or something going up. And normally outside of a tab, you might do something like, put 1 in your first row and then just sort of have it, each formula says equals the one above plus 1, for example. It could be plus 2. And that goes, all the way down. So you've got a nice sequential count. Again, though, what if you put new data on that? And effectively nothing happens, and you have to then drag that formula down. So how can you get around that and stop having to drag the formula down? So I'll just get rid of that new data again, because I've actually got 3 different ways that you can do this. The first 2 are sort of a kind of personal preference kind of thing, but the next one, the third one, has got a lot more flexibility, and you can do a lot more than just a straight incremental count and index. So let me just show you the first one then. So the first one we're going to use is the rows function. So rows, it just counts the number of rows in an array, so a range of cells. And the great thing about sort of tables and things like that is that it doesn't matter if you count your current cell. It doesn't generate any kind of circular reference. So if we count from the header, and then we need to put a colon in here, so we're going to count from the header to the current cell, and hit enter, we get a formula that goes all the way down, and you can see obviously it's going to start at 2, so there's 2 rows. All I need to do to make that start at 1 is put a -1 on the end of that formula, and we've got our incremental count. And because it's the same function all the way down, it will auto-populate, which I'll show you in a minute. Second one, just personal preference. This is the one I tend to use when I'm doing that kind of thing. And this one, I will just say that I want the row function, which is the row of one particular reference. So I'll say the row of the current cell, so its own row number, and I'll just deduct the row number of the header function, which, because that has its own table notation, it'll always be the header, so it'll always tell you which row you're in. And so you'll get exactly the same kind of result as you would with that, but it's just a slightly different way of doing it. Both of them, incidentally, it doesn't matter if you insert rows, this will all work because it's relative to the table position. So inserting columns and rows is not really going to affect these numbers. So let's just get rid of those. And the third way that you might want to generate something like this is with an offset function. And this has some additional flexibility, as I alluded to before. So let's just set off with the offset function in case you haven't used it before. Now, incidentally, all of these functions are on my 30 free Fantastic Functions cheat sheet, which is available for free with the download link in the description. So get your hands on that, the only 33 essential functions in Excel, in my opinion. Okay, so the offset function then allows you to move from a particular position by a certain number of rows and columns, and also gives you the option to sort of expand that range. You can pick any range relative to any other range. So of course, I'm going to say I want to start at my current cell on this, and the number of rows, I'm going to say I'm going to go -1, so I'm going to go up a row. I don't want to move any columns, and height and width are optional. They default to just one cell, so we'll leave it like that. And when I hit that, every row there says offset function. This one's saying I want what's in the header, that one's saying I want the row above, that one's saying I want the row above that, etc. So it doesn't really do anything as it stands. But what I can do is detect where I'm in the first row and put that as a 1. So let's just do that. So we use it in conjunction with the row function. So if the row function equals 1, so now we have a start number that we can put in. So if it's row 1, what do we want it to start on? So let's start it at, say, 1,000 for the moment, because we know we've got several thousand rows of data. If the row is 1, we start at 1,000. Otherwise, we take the row above and let's just add 1 for the moment. Okay? And so now we get a number starting at 1,000 and going up by 1. And of course, we could say that we want it going up by in 2s, or any other kind of combination of things there, or any other start position. So we've got something that's a lot more flexible, and we can even sort of multiply it by the number above, or create any kind of sequence that we desire using that kind of technique. So let's go back to 1. So do they work? Well, let's try and add the new data and see what we get. So here's the new data. I'm going to add it on at the bottom of this. So I'll just go down to the bottom here and add it on. And as you can see, this original index breaks, but these ones all carry on doing exactly what we hoped they'd do. So these incrementing by 1, this is obviously going to be 1,000 higher than that because it starts at 1,000. But I don't know if you've spotted, there's a potential issue with this, and that is if you sort this data in a completely different order. Well, for a start, the original one messes up, but the new ones that I've added still start at 1 and go down. So these numbers are in no way attached to the actual data. But there is a fix for this, and I'll tell you about it right now. Okay, so we've got our table, we've got our new functions on that index things and start at different positions. And now we want to get it so that when we put in new data, these the allocated numbers that are here are retained. So one way we could do that is to essentially treat this as some kind of input table that we do not sort and filter, and we have a duplicate table that's just the values, and we can sort and filter that to our heart's content and use it in reports and stuff. And the perfect tool for the job of doing that in an automated way is Power Query. So I'll show you how to do that now because it's very simple. Go to the data menu, and as long as you're in the table, you can hit from table range, and this will put it in to here straight away. Now I'm not going to do anything to this other than on the drop down menu for close and load, hit close and load to, and I'm going to say that I want it in a table, and it just so happens I'm going to put it in an existing worksheet here. So table and existing worksheet. If I go over to this worksheet now, that's been put in there. I just might need to do a bit of, formatting of numbers or something because I didn't do it in Power Query. So that's formatted as a date and that one as a number. But now what we've got is these numbers, and these are no longer functions or formulas. These are literally just the numbers that I allocated to that data. So when I sort it, for example, these numbers come with it, and they're now effectively reference numbers. Okay, but what about the new data? Well, this is the beauty of Power Query, of course, is that you can take this new data, can add it back on our input sheet on the bottom. These numbers auto-generate, and then I can go back to here, and if I refresh this data, all the new stuff comes in, and I've got my new reference numbers. The original reference numbers have not changed, so if I was using them elsewhere, they would still refer to the right data. So that's how you can retain the same sort orders and references. Okay, but what if you don't want Power Query, you don't want to have to refresh things, you want some kind of auto-populating unique ID on your table as you type in new data? Here I've essentially got a few pointers for you, because it's going to depend on your data and how much of it there is and how easy it is to generate sort of unique IDs from it. So the first thing I want to do is generate for a series of functions various sets of numbers that I can combine together in different ways and then truncate into some kind of ID. So that's my approach. And I've actually not got very many columns here. And if you've got more columns, you've got a lot more flexibility. Before I start though, I want some kind of duplicate check. So I'm just going to introduce a unique duplicate count on this ID column so I can tell when I hit the point of uniqueness essentially in my IDs. And the way I'm going to do that is use the countif function, and I'm going to count in that range how many times that individual value appears, like that. Of course that's full of zeros at the moment, but if I put like a 1 there, if I then duplicate that, you'll see these both change to 2, so I've got duplicates. And the way I can do that is put the countif at the top. So let's do that, and I'm going to say I'm going to count if any of those values in that column there are greater than 1, because 1 would be one occurrence of it. I'll do that. So you can see 2. So let's get a shot of that. Right, so we're set up now for checking if we're creating unique references or not in our data. Okay, so what you do next might depend on, do you want this unique ID to actually mean anything, or do you want it to be like completely random? Because if it's completely random, then you can sort of skip the step I'm about to tell you. So in this case, I'm going to say, for a start, let's just make it equal to the date. So let's do that. Okay, now let's just check how unique that date is. I'll click on there to pick it up, and you can see 3,300 duplicate entries, clearly not very unique at all. So that's no good to me. So let's merge that with, say, the first letter of the customer name. Now, rather than have that as a letter, let's make this a numeric code, because it's going to be a lot easier to work with. So we can do that by using the function code. And now, if we just click on customer name there, it's just going to pick up the first letter. So the one I've picked there, an A, and it'll tell you the character code of a letter A. So let's do that. Now you can see it's changed our date into a number, which is great. So we don't need to use any other functions for that. And it's reduced our duplicate count down to 844. Certainly not unique, but it's far better than it was. So this will, if I now sort by this order here, you can see we've got a sort now, which is date, then customer alphabetically by the first letter. So we've got some kind of meaningful sort order. Let's just undo that so it's a bit more random. Right, so now we want to generate some more numbers from our information in the row. So one way we could do that is to look at the len function. So the len function will give you the length or the number of characters in a string of text. So for example, we could say the length of the customer name field. And although we're not getting anything unique, we're getting, a variety of numbers. So we could, for example, multiply that by another length, perhaps the length of the product name field. And now we're getting something that, clearly got a lot of duplicates in it, but it's a bit better. Another thing that we've got that's fairly unique, may potentially be unique, is the order value. And, it's a bit messy at the moment. There's a lot of digits and stuff. So perhaps we need to round that. So if we take like a round version of the order value, we'll round it to no decimal places, so we get whole numbers. And perhaps if we now say, let's multiply those two numbers together, now we've got something that is much higher potential of being unique. So let's go back to our unique ID now, but let's just merge that with our formula that we've just created. And straight away, we've actually hit on a unique combination there. There's no duplicates in that data. Now, although we do have a unique ID, it's far from ideal. For a start, everything begins with a 4. Okay, and they're different length digits, and they're very, very long numbers for a table that's only actually got about 3,000 rows in it at the moment. Even if it was 30,000 rows, you'd say this is a long unique ID. So I think we can do a lot better than this. So the first thing is, we definitely don't need the 4 for a start. So we know that we can remove that off the beginning, and we'll still work as a sort order. And so one of the ways we can do that is use the mid function on it. So we'll say the mid of this text, and that allows us to take something out of the middle. And we're going to say we want to start the second digit. Now we know that our sort order part of the ID was 7 digits long. So we know that, and although we've chopped the first number off, we still need at least 6 digits. So if we go back to the first 6, we've essentially just replicated that unique ID, and we've got the same amount of duplicates. So we know we need to go up from there. So let's pick 7 characters and see how we go. Right, we're now down to 136 duplicates. Let's now pick 8 characters. Right, we're now down to 10 duplicates. What about if we pick 9 characters? We've hit back on a unique ID now with 9 characters. So we know that 9 is the minimum amount of characters using this function that's going to give us a unique ID. So I would always say go one more, because if you go now to a 10 character number, you've got an order of magnitude potentially more room in that unique ID. Okay, and we can add, say, a reference on the front by just putting like UID and an ampersand symbol, and we now have like this sort of unique ID here that's self-generating. Is it definitely self-generating? Let's just check. So let's go back to our new data, copy that, and we'll go all the way to the bottom, and we'll paste it on here. All of these unique IDs are generating by themselves, and we've still got no duplicates. So complete success. All of the functions I use here are in my 33 fantastic functions for Excel cheat sheet. And if you did need any other functions, they're all in the All Functions library as well that comes with the download. So the link's in the description. Get your hands on that. Save yourself a whole load of time and effort in Excel, because I've categorized it all, and I don't think you actually need to learn any more functions unless you've got some kind of niche application. Now you can potentially do all of this in one column, because these of course are helper columns with different formulas in. They're not necessarily relevant to generating that ID. That ID, you could combine all of these functions into a single formula and use it. And you may also want to check if it's unique when you add new data and retains its uniqueness. And if you've got the unique formula, you can do something better than have an extra column, because you could literally do a count of the column entries minus the count of the unique column entries. So for example, if I said count of this, right, or count A to be more precise, to count our text, right, That will give me 5,000 entries, as you can see. And then if I deduct from that count A of the unique items in the column, that one there, that should be 0. So we've got an inbuilt duplicate check straight away there as well. Hopefully that was useful, save you a bit of time generating automatic references for your data, and save you having to do a whole load of copy and pasting every time new data is coming in. If you want to save more time in Excel, hit that subscribe button and the bell icon, and I will see you in the next video shortly.